Hi, everyone. Carmen Dinisco here from the Launch Network. We got an awesome show today. Get retail ready with Mr. Jim DeBetta. Jim, what's going on, my friend?
Hey, it's good. Just busy. You and I were talking just offline here a few minutes ago. It's fast and furious. There's so much going on. It seems like everybody's coming to life. It's like spring is here, things are blooming, and inventors are also blooming. They're coming out of the woodwork, looking to get things going. It's, the winter's gone. I think people are feeling a little bit better about Corona with vaccines. I think people are feeling more confident. And I'm starting to see that in the amount of emails I'm getting, the messages I'm getting. People have said, oh, I've been waiting all year, and I've been, I finally got my act together, or things are more situated. Whatever it is, they're back in the fold. And I know for you too, it's just been like, I'm like, when I text Carmine and he doesn't answer me within the day, I'm like, either he's dead or something odd is going on. So that's when I know where you're like, I'm just beside myself, busy. But that's good. That's what we want. We want to be busy. We want to get the inventors on the right path. And we've been doing a lot of that. You and I are working on a couple of new initiatives. And that's what you want to see. We get them in the beginning when they're just starting out, and we can help them avoid all the mistakes that we podcast about every week, right? All the things that go wrong and all the money they spend the wrong way. Now we're finally getting people early, like, hey, I've got an idea and I need your help. And it's great because we can literally put them into like a situation where it's step one, here's what we're going to do first. And then step two, we're going to do, and when they're patient and they listen and you can manage their expectations that way, generally speaking, things go really well. Even although there are hitches and bumps in the road and all the things we know about, still they're making progress. So that's been the big thing.
Yeah, no doubt. But as we talk about on the show, and I'm a little crazy this because it is nuts, is that we have so many people, they want to start at the same time, and we talk about how we should get started early. If everyone jumps on and wants to start at the same time, there's going to be a slowdown. We don't want people to think just because you call us, right, Jim, on Monday, we're going to get started Tuesday. This stuff takes time.
It's tough. You just, I think a lot of people just want a little bit of attention. And I'm always making sure that at least if you tell somebody, right, like, hey, it's busy, you won't hear from me for a few days, they feel better. I think a lot of times it's when they start investing in the process financially and emotionally, and then they don't hear anything from me, they start getting a little worried. I'm like, I'm here, don't worry, I'm around. There are things we have to situate. So, which leads me into what we're going to talk about today, because this is like one of those things that comes up all the time. And that is, people say, Jim, listen, I want a license and I also want to sell my product to retailers. And I've gotten this like 3 or 4 times in the past week. And it all just kind of goes to this, hey, I'm starting out and I'm not sure what path I want. I usually post on social media about choose your path. License your product to a company in exchange for royalties, or develop it, manufacture it, package it, sell and market yourself, either on your own website or to retailers or on Amazon or wherever. And I've had a few people this past week say, I want to do it all. Now, before I respond to that, I want to know what your thoughts are, because it's always interesting as a product developer and manufacturer, that kind of a thing. I like to talk about that. And by the way, I know that we have a guest who is supposed to be coming on. He might be trying to click in. So if his name is Dennis Clayton, if Dennis can jump in a minute, we'll pull him in. But
Dennis is here. Dennis is here. He's waiting in the waiting room. So if you want to introduce him, then we'll continue the conversation if you want.
All right, good. All right. Dennis, good morning.
I think he's there. Hey, Dennis, you there? Can you hear me?
It's like the outtakes.
Yeah.
Podcasting. This is good. This is what people like. They like all this stuff. This is what goes on.
Hey, Dennis, that doesn't show that you have your audio connected.
Which means he won't hear you.
Yeah, I'll watch and see when he comes on. But so a little bit about, Jim, I get a lot of clients that want to create their product because they're so passionate about it. But they also don't know a lot of the process. So as they're creating, they're thinking, I want a license. So they're always, riding that fine line of how much should they do if they want to license or manufacture or sell to retail, things in that sense. So yeah, there is always that gray area of either should I do both? Should I just license? Should I try to manufacture? I think that, there's a lot to be done if you try to license anyway. You really have to go towards that manufacturing side and create a great prototype, maybe even manufacture a small run just so you could tell the potential licensee what the costs were. Yes, manufacturing is able to, a manufacturer or your licensor, the licensee may not even know if your product's manufacturable if you don't do that.
Yeah, and people, you can do both. I mean, when I had my product company, I was able to do both, and so in short, what happened there was I was already up and selling, and I was doing millions of dollars in business already before I started getting approached by potential licensees. So I had companies that saw my product on retail shelves, like in Target or Walmart, and they would call or email and say, hey, we see your stuff out in wherever. Hey, we want to license your product. We want to sell it under our brand name. And then, of course, you have to make that decision. Do you want to disrupt the work you're doing and all the work you're building up, or do you want to just offer it to somebody else? I chose to just keep going. It wound up being very successful, but I did a couple of sort of side licensing deals where I took a product of mine, like a specific item within my line, and I said to a potential licensee, I'm like, you can run with this or these few things, and I won't sell them anymore in my line. I'll pull them out of my line. But it's easy when you have 100 things in your product line. You can say, here's 3 or 5 or 10 things, run with that. And I did that, and I made kind of like these co-packaged things where I had my brand, a couple of things of mine in like a gift box with a couple of things of theirs, and we collectively sold it. So there's a lot of crazy stuff you could do in licensing, but people typically come to me first and say, what do I do? And I always say, well, look, when you're starting out, just for your own sanity and time and money, it's best that you pick a path, but you can ultimately do both. But I'm like, if I actually had somebody come to me last week, or actually a few days ago, and said, they sent me an email from my website and said, Jim, I've done this, 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 and this. I've done all these things. I've got the product in manufacturing. I did all the molding. I got patents. I did all the things. They did all these things, spent definitely tens of thousands of dollars for sure. And they said, yeah, so what I want to do is I want to license this out. And I'm like, oh, crap. And so, yeah, and sometimes they don't know, they use the word licensing wrong, which I've seen half the time. They'll think licensing it is selling it to a retailer. Like they actually will think that's called licensing. Yep. So you have to clarify. You say, well, okay, just for clarification, you've done all this. You manufactured, it's being made, it's coming to you in a couple of months from the factory. Your goal is to sell it either on your own website, on Amazon, or to retailers or locally, correct? And when they say, yes, that's what I want to do, then you're like, whew, all right, good. But this particular person, I think, wants to not only sell it themselves, like they said, oh, I'm going to put it right on Amazon, and I want to sell it locally, but I also want to have these particular corporations sell it too. And I said, well, not so fast, because what happens is if you're going to try to sell it to retail, the company you want to license it to will also want to sell it to retail. That's where they're going to sell it. So you can't approach Target while this company is putting it on the shelves at Target. So it's two people sort of butting heads. Yeah. I said, you need a plan. So we haven't discussed it further, but I said, you just can't just go out there like hog wild and just start selling and trying to license. And you need a plan, and you don't have a plan, and you're going to basically screw yourself if you just try to do everything without even knowing the ramifications of doing it all.
Yeah. Yeah. 1,000,000%. Yeah. I mean, first you have to know the lingo. You have to know the process, which way you want to go. And of course, what's really needed for licensing. Obviously, there's people out that talk about, hey, you can license a product with just a picture. And people do. You can license without. I'm not big on patents, but you should maybe have a provisional at least, or a working prototype. But there's people that license with just a picture, but also people win the lotto. When you're talking about the masses, you're always going to have a few people that can make it through that gap. But there's certain things you need to do if you want to license, but some of those things are also things you need to do if you want to manufacture. So I think that's what's the good part about it is if you know and you have a plan together, contact somebody like Jim, put that plan together. There's a certain point, right, Jim, where you've done all these things and then you can sit down and say, what should we do?
Yeah, and before I respond to that, obviously our guest has not been able to. It looks like he's been trying to click in, get on.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going on? So we'll try to get Dennis back on another time. But Dennis is from Stow and Spin. He's got this great sort of like a Lazy Susan product. He would probably kill me if I just called it something like that. But his product is really cool, and he's been very successful. I see his product being sold. He was on, I think it was QVC. He does very, very well with it.
Yeah.
So we were hoping to get him on. It was sort of I don't want to say a last minute thing. We had, we get people, I was telling this, we get people constantly that want to be on the show. And I try to prioritize people either that I know or have known in the business or who have contacted me in the past. And I try to get them on first, right? So Dennis is like, yeah, I'd like to be on. And I'm like, yeah, I'll get you on. And he's like, why'd you pick me? And I'm like, because, I've known you for years and you've got momentum. We've talked before. And so I want to get you on, So, but of course, that's how it goes, right? We do all that prep and then technology gets in the way and things just, who knows, right? It is what it is. But anyway, we'll get him back on. So anyway, yes, I think, Carmen, to lay it out for people in the best and simplest way. And this is why you and I both talk about loving to get people when they are just starting out. So somebody comes to me and says, Jim, I saw something about you online, or I've been reading about inventing, or I read a book, or Googled an article, and I've got an idea for something, but I don't know what to do. And my first step always, and this, we won't go deep in this, but just sort of getting to the licensing and retailing stuff. Of course, we tell them, listen, you need to do a patent search. And going online and shopping on Amazon is not a patent search because a lot of people patent things and then never commercialize it, meaning they never develop and sell them. So, Carmen, you might file for a patent for something, and then you just, I don't know, you go back to your day job, or you just forgot to do something with it, or you didn't have the money to do something with it, or you didn't have the time, or just something happened in your life that prevented you from getting there. So if you can't if you can't even have the rights to do something with your product, then it's over, right? So I always tell people, at the very least, do a thorough patent search. I like doing them myself quickly, but then I always like to turn it over to a patent attorney because they're going to find things that you don't find, blah, blah, blah. The people have different opinions. But after that, whether you patent or don't patent, that's a whole nother discussion. There's good and not good about patenting or not patenting. But at the end of the day, when you get through all that, now you need to flush that product out, right? What does it look like? You could draw it for me on a piece of paper, but ultimately, does it have moving parts? Does it have electronics? Does it need a battery? Is it just a solid thing? Whatever it is, that needs to be flushed out. And that could be done through CAD design or just simple mechanical drawings or 3D animation, things that you do, Carmen. There's different ways and price points to hit things to flush out an idea, because sometimes CAD can be extravagantly expensive and sometimes unnecessary, especially since the factory is able to ultimately work and do things with things like animation. Today, maybe not 20 years ago, right? But today things are different and the virtual things are helpful. But then once you get past that and you know what you've got, and it's sort of theorized or formulated on paper or virtually, that's when you have to start saying, what am I going to do with this thing? Do I want to try to now make a sell sheet, take this animation, embed it in the sell sheet, have a description, bullet points of the benefits and features of the product, blah, 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 and send that off to companies with the non-disclosure, to corporations that you want to license this to? And when we say licensing, we mean I approach Carmine, who is at Procter & Gamble, and Carmine says, Jim, we want to license this thing, which means Procter & Gamble is going to develop it, prototype it, manufacture it, package it, market, sell it. You go away. You go away. Procter & Gamble is doing everything. You go home and you hope that it gets to retail or wherever they're selling it, and it sells, and you get a royalty check every quarter or semi-annually or however it's agreed. That's licensing. If you decide, hey, you know what? That's not enough for me. I don't want to just get 3 or 5 or 8% royalties on something that I think I can make millions on potentially. Then you go and you have Carmine develop it, manufacture it, get it packaged, get it shipped to you. And then somebody like me will sell it to the retailers, or you can sell it on your own website, or you can take your hand at Amazon. You're going to pay for ads and do all those things. If everyone's watched our 3-part series with Carlos Alvarez on the Amazon stuff, they'll get a great sense of just how that works. But if you do that on your own, then that's what you do. You go out on your own and you call on the Targets, the Walmarts, the Costco's, the TJ Maxx's, the Walgreens, whoever it is, whatever your product is, you have to approach them, or you sell it yourself on your own website.
Mhm.
Those are the 2 paths. That's it. I mean, there's no other third path that I'm aware of. Carmen, I don't know about you, but those are the 2 ways. Now, again, getting into what we said before, once you're up and running and selling it a little bit, maybe on your own website to a retailer or 2, and then you find that maybe it's just too much for you to handle, or you can't afford the manufacturing piece or the marketing piece or whatever, or just maintaining a business. And now you approach companies and say, hey, look, I'm selling this thing successfully. I'm looking to license it out. And sometimes those deals are easier to get done because you've mitigated all the risk. You've shown a company, hey, look, not only is this thing viable, it's able to actually be made the way I describe it, but I'm actually selling it. People are buying it. And that makes it a little bit easier for a company to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, we'll do a licensing deal. And it may even get you more royalty percentages because you're literally taking a lot of the risk away from them. You've done all the groundwork, and you should get a little bit more. So what say you on that?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I mean, you said it exactly, because there's a lot of confusion, a lot of misconceptions out there. So the further along you can take the idea without, either manufacturing or going broke or making a misstep, the more people you can get involved and make the right decisions, the easier it is for someone to take it on and license it, obviously. Yeah. So I think that, yeah, I mean, 1,000,000%. If we do it smartly, we have a plan in place, it makes it easier for people to make those decisions.
Yeah, and I think one of the bigger challenges too, and this is a question I get all the time when people are asking about what should I do, they then say, should I go get prototypes made? And that leads to a whole nother discussion, because there are different schools of thought. There are people in our industry that sort of take a camp on one position and on another. I'm a believer that depending on the product, a really well articulated sell sheet is enough to get interest from a company. If you lay it out well,
Mm-hmm.
some good photos or renderings, great information, it's enticing, that's enough to get a company excited, enough to want to discuss it further. Now, on the flip side, if you have something that's very technical, something that the success of the product is predicated on how it works, how it moves, how it operates, because it's got moving parts or batteries or wires. Not always do you need a working prototype, because it can cost a lot of money to do that. But sometimes it's helpful to prove that the concept works. So you're basically investing in that. And again, whether you do that physically, like a physical prototype, or you're doing virtual prototypes, or 3D, like animation, things like that, where you could actually show it in motion, showing it being used, that is sometimes definitely needed, because sometimes a company just can't just wrap their head around exactly what it is you're trying to say on paper. And some people just aren't good at doing that. But if it's a static product, something that sits still, just whatever that widget is, if it's anything that's just a solid mass that doesn't do anything, it might solve a problem or help somebody, but like a laundry basket. Okay, I mean, it's a piece of plastic at the end of the day, right?
Mm.
So if yours is just a little bit different and you want to license it, do you really need to make a prototype? Especially like if you go to like a Rubbermaid, like a new Rubbermaid, and that's all they do is make rubber and plasticky things, they can handle it. They can handle the prototyping, right?
Yeah.
But if that thing has all different types of, things hanging off of it, and it's got moving parts, it's got, maybe it's like a Roomba attached to a laundry basket where it'll go to each room and pick, and so people can put their laundry, I don't know, whatever, something crazy. Maybe that you might want to do something a little more like a virtual prototype or some kind of animation to show how that would operate.
Yeah.
But people come to me a lot of times and say, I've just spent, $8,000 or 20 grand on a prototype or prototypes, and they want to license. I'm like, why? And sometimes, then occasionally I'll get somebody that will do it, and I'll be like, okay, well, that, they say, or they'll say to me, no, Jim, I've gone to companies, or I think that companies, I have a better chance at licensing this thing if I can show them how it works. I'm like, but you're approaching companies that are in the business of making the products that you are offering. So don't you think they know? Don't you think they have the experience? Don't you think they have the in-house team? Don't you think they have factories and mechanical engineers and design engineers and they have all these people sitting there. They know, they can figure it out, unless it's just something so obscure and weird that, it would take really a real high level team to do that.
Yeah.
But people insist on telling me what they have to do, and they've never done it before. I'm like, I've been doing this 25 years, I'm telling you that this is what's likely to happen when you do this, and this is what's likely to not happen if you don't do that. There's no 100% way to know, but I'd say 9 out of 10 times we get it right in terms of what we know the client needs, the inventor needs to proceed. But still, you get pushback, and this is where we talk about money getting wasted and people getting disillusioned with the inventing process. And they say, well, I tried to invent my product and I got screwed and I spent 20 grand with. Nobody told you to do those things yet. People get excited, they get emotional, and so they just start opening up their checkbooks and spending money. And then they come down off that high and realize that, well, maybe that was a waste of money, or maybe I didn't need to do that yet. Maybe I should have reached out to this person or this company or this retailer first, or I should have talked to somebody else in the business. Whatever it is, that's a common issue. And it all comes down to the same thing. Should you license? Should you go it on your own? You have to know the risks and rewards. You have to know what the costs are, what the steps are. But still, to this day, people still insist on going out, doing it wrong, and then coming back later after they've spent time and money and all the mistakes along the way, and then they want you to fix it.
Yeah, Jim, I mean, what's great about this is, as I'm listening to you, if anyone out there that's listening doesn't believe that Jim has been doing this for so many years and has a wealth of knowledge, I mean, I'm listening going, it's exactly what needs to be said. I mean, you're not saying that this is what to be done exactly each time, because every product's different. Every product's different. Every step is different. Each time is different. So, Jim, you have 1,000,000%. The great part about what you're saying is that you need to I don't want to say make mistakes, but you need to test each one of your ideas. So I make this prototype that doesn't do anything, and I present it to a company, and they have all these questions. So I make the prototype, or I make a sell sheet or whatever that answers those questions. Now the next company I show it to, they have different questions. So after a little while, I'm going to answer all those questions. I might have to make a prototype that works, but if they're not asking me for a prototype, I don't need to make some extravagant prototype. So like what Jim's saying, step through each step, take that feedback, take that knowledge, do those testing. And at some point, you're going to answer all the questions. You're going to put it in front of somebody who's wants a license, and they're going to get it,
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like I say, a lot of people will come to me and they've manufactured the product, and it's sitting in their house.
Yeah.
And now they want to license it. I'm like, you've counteracted everything that licensing is about. Licensing to me, and I again, we always say these things with a little grain of salt. We don't want people to just sort of listen like completely 100% and think that there aren't variations. But basically, my feeling is when you want to license, you want to do the least amount of work possible. You really do. You want the company you're licensing your idea to do all of the work, because that's why you're licensing. You're licensing so you can hand off this great idea to a company who has all the capabilities in-house or out-house or wherever they got it. And you're going to sit back and collect royalty checks. That's why you license it. As far as I know, that's why people license. Now, if you want to go it on your own, then you are going to have to go through all these steps, which is fine too, because to me, I'm always a big proponent of going it on your own, because dollar for dollar, you stand to make a lot more when you sell. It's just a numbers game. If you get a 5% royalty on $100,000 in sales, you'll make $5,000. Mm-hmm. If you're making it and selling it on your own, and I've run my own multi-million-dollar company, so I know this, for every $100,000 you sell, you're probably going to put 20 to 30,000 in your pocket. So 20 to 30,000 or more versus 5,000. Well, do the math. I'm going to make a lot more money than the person who's licensing. But then again, I'm also investing my time and days and nights running a business. I didn't mind doing it. I liked doing it when I ran my companies. I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed getting the product sold, and I enjoyed making money doing it. When you license, by the way, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to get a licensing deal or that the product is going to do well. So the risk is still there. Now, granted, a bigger company, like, hey, we were talking about Procter & Gamble, certainly has a much better shot at getting a product placed at retail chains faster than even I could, because they're already in every store and they take up a ton of room, and they're a powerful company. And if they say, hey, we got something new to Target or Walmart, Target or Walmart's going to probably put it in there, right? It's just the way it goes. But that doesn't mean it's going to sell well. I mean, just because a big company puts out a product, a lot of products fail. We just don't see them because they pull them out of the store so quick. If they're not doing well in the first 30 to 60 days, they yank the stuff. And you just don't even see it as a consumer. You wouldn't even notice it for the most part.
You see it in the corner of the store at the bargain or sale section.
The bins, like those dump bins where they're just, like $5, $3, right? They're trying to get rid of stuff. But that's the thing people don't see. So it's all about your tolerance. Like, what risk are you willing to take? Some people just feel like, hey, I'm not, and I've had people tell me this, I'm not a good business person. I don't know anything about sales and marketing, so I'd rather just license it. And that's fine. Acknowledge what you are not, or what you don't feel like you want to learn to be, and let other people do it. Now, conversely, there are people that come to me and say, Jim, I don't know anything about sales and marketing, but I want to bring a product to market. I'm the guy that fills in the blanks, right? So I go, hey, Carmine, I've got this guy or girl that has this product. You work on the design and manufacturing phase, and then you basically pass it off to me to do the sales and marketing. So in essence, really, the inventor, it's sort of like a quasi licensing deal, right? They're still paying for everything to be done, but they're basically having somebody else or other people's do the work, like you, me, and there's half a dozen other people involved sometimes.
Yeah.
We're doing all that work, but they stand to make a lot of money if the product does well. So it always comes down to that, where you just have to make a choice that's best for you, what's best for your family, what's best for your situation, financially, mentally, can you handle it? A lot of people license, I say this stat all the time, less than 1% of products that come about ever actually get licensed for people that attempt to license them. It's a very small number. It really is. But there are thousands and thousands of people every year that get licensing deals. So somebody's getting them. And we see online on LinkedIn and Facebook, people, oh, I got a licensing deal. Congratulations. That's great. And it is great. And it's a huge accomplishment. But probably a third to half of those deals don't actually wind up yielding any royalties. Like, they get a licensing deal. It's a piece of paper, but then the product gets shelved for 2 years, or something goes wrong, the deal falls apart, even though they have a deal, or they test the product, they manufacture it, and it gets put out in the shelves and it bombs. Deal's over, right? So it's all just about what you want, how you want to do it. And, you can do both ultimately, but you have to start from the beginning. And that's where if there's a takeaway here for inventors, because I know we have to wrap up shortly, is that before you do anything, put your emotions aside, corral your thinking into, like, I need a plan. And I don't care who you approach, just approach somebody that knows what they're doing in this business and get a game plan in place. Have your own blueprint, know what the steps are before you start spending money, before you come off and just say, I just want a license, I just want to make it on my own. Well, we want to show you both sides of the equation. And then once you know that, and you know each step for each one of those paths you want to take, you're going to be much better off. You're going to feel better. And even if you don't succeed in the end, it won't be for a lack of knowledge or a lack of effort. Sometimes things just don't work, but you're doing it the right way that way, versus coming to me or coming to a Carmine 6 months later or 6 years later and telling us about all that you've spent and all that you've done wrong. And now you're broke and now you need help. That's just, and it's almost in every situation, most of the time that's avoidable, but people get emotional and they get excited and they get sold. People are promising them things. You're going to do great. You're going to make millions. Oh, this is a slam dunk, whatever the things they say. And then they get caught up in it and it's their little baby. And then most of the time it doesn't work out.
Yeah. No doubt, Jim. 100%. It's so hard not to get emotional in a project. When I speak with a potential new client who wants to make something, sometimes they want to move forward on the phone, like a first conversation. And I'm like, listen, think about it, sleep on it, call me in the morning. I'm not going anywhere. I really want them to realize that, as you said, it's a long journey and it takes a lot. Even when everything's going right, it's still stressful, man.
Yeah. I mean, we have a product, a teapot product that's coming out. You and I have been working on with our inventor friend, Parag, and he's out on the West Coast. We've been, this thing's like going on 2 years.
Yeah.
And we still don't have it in our hand yet because we've gone through so many iterations and changes and behind the scenes, we're positioning the marketing, getting his social media set up and talking to retailers and getting his website done and sell sheets and sales decks and all these things that are going on. And he's got the means, the ability, and the intelligence to see this through. And still, it's taken this long. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, this product is a little more particular. It's got, some intricacies that, we want to get it right. But at the end of the day, it still will wind up taking us like a couple of years before this thing even gets introduced to retail. And that's a good situation. So it can happen in a year if everything falls right. But you got to figure it's a year to 2 years from start to finish to get something retail ready. But if you want to license it, you just sort of don't do those things and you approach companies and hope that somebody's willing to do all that for you.
Yeah. And that time goes by really fast. But I know we're going to hang up, but also, Jim, I get a lot of questions, and maybe we could do it in a future show on selling outside the U.S. to other countries and approaching them and doing those things. I get a lot of questions about that. People really want to break into the European market, into Italy or Canada or Australia. And I tell you what, I don't have that much experience with that.
I know. My companies, my optics company, we sold all over the world.
Wow.
So definitely, yes, we should definitely talk about that because I've got a lot of experience there. And I'll give people a little teaser. One of the great ways to do that is by using distributors in those particular countries. If you try to sell locally to a country where you don't speak the language, you don't understand the customs, you don't understand how the consumers are, what they look for, what their retail stores are like, it's really difficult. It's hard enough doing it here. Trying to do it in a place you don't know anything about is literally like doing it in the dark. So, using distributors is just one way to go about doing that. But yes, we'll definitely get on that on another show.
All right, man, that's awesome. All right, well, all you listeners out there, another great show, talking this stuff through. Please, if you have any questions, want to get in touch with us, Mr. JimDeBetta.com or JimDeBetta.com. Find him on social media or leave him a message on his website. For all you people out there who are consuming our podcast or even go out to YouTube, we go on to the Launch Network on YouTube or find our show, The Launch Network, on Google Play, iTunes, wherever you consume your podcast. And for myself, Carmen Disco, from Mr. Jim DeBetta, we thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time on Get Retail Ready. You all take care.